Roles of a denizen. A content creator is a user that creates posts and is rewarded based on the quality of their content. A content evaluator is a user that helps assess the quality of content and enforces community standards. The evaluator is effectively taking part in a marketplace to curate content and is rewarded for early evaluation. A content consumer is a user that wishes to find and consume the most valuable content in a given subject area or within a community. A lair owner is a person holding tokenized ownership of all or part of a community lair. Owners are rewarded with a portion of all mining activity happening within their lair. Owners are incentivized to build the best community of content creators and evaluators.
Good morning, everybody. This is Coffee with Den, episode 77, and today we're going to talk a little bit about privacy tools and decentralization. At least at first we will, and then we'll probably quickly get sidetracked off onto something else like we always do. Gravity Crab has taken a delivery from Scale Puppy, and T Swift or Die is busy not being Jonah Hill. We'll bring them up here in a second. The topic today, which we've already got a couple of questions for, is privacy tools, decentralization. And if you find this post over in the Coffee with Den layer, there's going to be a link right under links and reminders. First one that says join live. So you can click that. You can join the show, talk to us about whatever you want to talk about. If you do, just leave a quick note in the chat to let us know you're here and ready to go, and we'll bring you up. You can also watch this on Odyssey, which I recommend. And yeah, leave a reply about all the things. So let's see. Gravity Crab is here, and we had John for a second, but he disappeared whenever I don't know, said his name. So it's like the opposite of. He's the opposite of the devil.
That's probably the best description you could have given John. The opposite of Satan is what he is today.
Yeah. You know the. Speak of the devil and he shall appear thing.
Speak of the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Jackie went and picked my wonderful wife. We saw a bagel truck when we were driving to get here. So you just have to go in until early, hence why you can see her in the corner of the screen, which is going to be her now.
Is that Scrubs?
Yeah, it looks like Scrubs. You're going to work, right? Shakes head, yes. So this guy.
I'm going to cut that out. I'm going to turn that into like a soundbite and then tell everybody you're a chauvinist. Like, here's Gravity Crab telling his wife, "You're going to work, right?
You're going to work." We can make it worse. Pay the bills, or you can't. Pay the bills, so you can't come home. So this guy has this big ass bagel, like good lord. So I'm assuming it's going to be fantastic.
Mm-hmm. All right, bagel hour.
It's actually a really good bagel, which I'm not going to eat on the show, but you know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. John's coming back. We didn't scare him away forever. That's handy. He'll be back up in a second. So
I don't think we could scare John away if we tried.
We can try harder.
Yeah, we've tried.
So we've got a question right off the bat about the topic from both I Am for I Am and from Jacob Wayne. Let's see if we can hear. Let's see if we can hear John. I'm gonna wait for a second. He's still a little bit
vanished again.
He's still janky.
It's because he's running from Canada. Remember?
Yeah,
he's on the run, hiding.
Yeah, John. Last time we saw him was in New York, covered in dust or smoke, or I don't know. What do they call it? Chemtrails? It's definitely chemtrails.
Yeah, chemtrails, definitely.
Good morning.
I had a whole argument with Tom about that.
All right.
Wait, what the hell? We've had a lot of good mornings from I Am without him actually being here.
Yeah, he's busy this month. He told us that.
So I don't care how busy he is. He should be here with us.
So we can sort of hear you. Yeah, you're a little bit.
Yeah.
You sound like you're on hotel Wi-Fi. Is what it sounds like.
You have paused at the most Jonah Hill looking picture you could have paused at, though.
What is that's actually just that's great. That'll be your part. Yeah, you're back, dude. Yeah, we can see you and hear you now.
Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, it works now.
Yeah.
All that. Welcome back. Where are you? You don't have to say. You don't have to disclose if you're on the run or something. But
He's frozen again.
yeah, probably ain't gonna work out, John. You can keep trying though. In the meantime, let's read. I want to read Jacob Wayne's question real quick because he's got a question about VPNs. So today we'll talk a little bit about probably a lot of bit about decentralization, and I can recommend some privacy tools. We can talk about that. VPNs.
I could use a VPN.
Yeah, I had some negative experience with a VPN recently. So
Really?
they are
I've always
definitely
had-
not all made the same.
I've always had negative experiences with VPNs. Every time I've run one, whether it be a pay for or a free one, there's always something that just screws up, and it doesn't make sense.
So Jacob Wayne asks, or says, howdy, y'all. I never use a VPN, and I understand the concept, but I don't really know what's actually happening. Does the VPN software enable the privacy for your entire computer? I live in Texas. Would I want to make the VPN say that I'm in Chicago, for example, so that the time zones and whatnot is still accurate, or does that even matter?
That's clever.
Speak to me like I'm a noob. Also, I am for I am. I messaged you, but yeah, you know what? This is a good point. The DMs on the Den messages. There's one specific thing I don't like about the design, and that is that if you go into your messages and you find a DM that somebody has already messaged you with and you reply to it, it'll be in the same little DM message, right? But if you go to someone's profile and you DM them again, it actually pops in as a new conversation. So you can have several DMs from the same person, but they come up as different messages, different conversations in your inbox. And that can get messy. That can get lost a little bit. And the reason for that is because we wanted to try something new, and we did this thing where you can basically pay someone to read your message. Let's say it's someone like Elon Musk who has to hire people to read his messages and then send him the ones that aren't spam, for example, right? Instead, you could have a system where the person messaging you can attach money to it to say, hey, no, I'm serious. Please read this. And then the ones with the most money attached to it go to the top. So that's something that's part of the design on Den. You can add a Matter tip to opening your message. And as the recipient, you can even set it to where nobody can message you unless you have a certain threshold of money attached to it, right? So if you're like a really popular person, it lets you filter out spam. It's a spam filter approach. So anyway, because of that, some of the messages, this is immediately getting sidetracked, but because of that, some of the messages can get mixed up as, different DMs from the same person. Before I read the rest of this, let's bring John up one more time. What's up? You've moved and you now have a wood headboard behind you.
Yeah, I'm in all right, so I'm in a hotel room, right, in Italy, and the fucking internet sucks like a penis. And I figured out that my Wi-Fi connection is better when I'm not in the corner of the room in 3 walls. There's a little nook where the desk goes, right? And the Wi-Fi fucking sucks right there. So if I move towards on the bed, which I think is closer to where the fucking Wi-Fi waves hit, it's better. So
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out if I can even fucking host the show tomorrow with how shit this internet is.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah, Wi-Fi is a fickle beast. It reflects, it bounces around, it interferes with itself, and it can go through some walls but not others. And you're sharing it with all your neighbors if you're in a hotel.
Honestly,
so yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of I don't know. Well, you don't. I can hear you okay, but your video does not match your audio for me.
Oh, okay.
which sucks.
Well, hey man, if you can't do it tomorrow, just let me know and we'll roll with it. You're in Italy, you said.
Yeah, I'm in Sardinia.
Oh, far out. Sardinia?
No, it's pretty far. It's not that close.
Okay. Well, the color's the same. Looks like you have the you're still yellow from New York. I don't know. I think that's just the camera. Though.
Oh, well, that's the wall of the fucking place, though.
Okay.
And all the lights are like yellow, like that.
They wanted you to feel right at home.
I mean, I only had like a day of it, and then we dipped.
Okay.
So
cool.
What the fuck is Dragon Chain influencers?
It's something that somebody made up one time.
Such a weird.
So,
that's never gonna happen.
Well, not for at least like a little while. Yeah, everything's on sort of on wait and see mode at the moment. So back to what Jacob Wayne was talking about. He gives an update about his retro collection too, which has come along pretty nice. VPNs though. So how do they work? Talk to me like a noob. So a VPN, first of all, you do not need to worry about connecting, for example, to some place that's in the same time zone as you, so that it like the time still matches and stuff like that. That's not an issue. What it does, and it really does depend on how you have it set up and what VPN you're using, but 90% of the time, probably 95% of the time, it is going to be something that you sign up for. Either you pay for it, you should pay for it. The free ones are not your friend. And typically they'll give you something to download and run on your computer that you sign into with your account, and you connect to it. And when you do that, the idea is that you're creating an encrypted tunnel between your computer and the computer that you're connecting to, the server that you're connecting to, that you're paying for. And what happens is, instead of whenever you open your web browser or you open your messaging client or you use Skype or you sign into StreamYard here and do a show, instead of all that internet traffic going from your house out to the internet just through your local internet service provider with your IP address attached to it and all of that stuff, instead of doing that, you first tunnel through or connect to the server that you're connecting to, your VPN server. Maybe that's in Chicago, maybe that's in Italy, maybe that's in Albania, wherever you have it connected to. And then once it gets there, it comes out of that VPN server in the same way that it would normally come out of your house's internet connection. So why is that important? Anybody looking at that traffic, whether it be Google, who's trying to give you localized results for what you're searching for, whether it be Netflix, who's trying to see what you're allowed to watch based on what geographical region that you're in, or if something more nefarious like advertisers tracking you to see what they want to sell you, or evil elite hackers on the internet trying to hack your house or something, whatever you're worried about. What they'll see is the traffic coming out of Milan or the traffic coming out of Australia or wherever your VPN is, right? So they don't know what your IP address is the idea. And if they don't know that, they can't figure out where you live. And they can't connect directly to your computer in the way that they would if you weren't going through a VPN. So that's the most common way that VPNs are used. Now, the other way that if you're using it more professionally, like you, for example, are a videographer, and let's say you have a computer at home that instead of being at home connecting to a VPN server out somewhere else to hide where you're from, maybe you're out somewhere else traveling and you want to connect back to your house because you have videos hosted on your local machine and you want access to them, right? Or you have your music library hosted locally and you want access to that while you're traveling. Well, you could reverse that whole thing that I just said, and you can make your house become the VPN server and you connect to that remotely. And then it's like you're on your home network again. That's where it comes from. The VPN name comes from, virtual private network. you can actually set up across the internet a bunch of machines that connect to a server, and they all pretend to be on the same like virtual private network. So if you want to play StarCraft at the LAN party or something like that, probably an outdated reference, but that's one of the things you could do. And then they're not all equal, though, right? Some of them do a better job of, you'll see things like advertised like an internet kill switch. Some of them have this fancy thing. They all call it something different, but basically it's just a way of enforcing that all traffic on your computer goes through that VPN, which is the other part of the question. Sometimes when a connection disconnects, I guess, whenever it drops the connection, your computer will automatically try to reconnect. And if it can't, it'll connect to like your local internet, your local ISP, which if you're trying to hide your traffic from people watching your IP address, watching your local internet, or whatever, that's bad, right? You don't want that leakage. So some of them have this thing they call a kill switch, or they call it a network lock, or they call it something like that. Basically, it just enforces that if there's no VPN connection, no traffic gets out. So that's something to look for. Depending on what you're doing, you may be a journalist or something that is in a jurisdiction that doesn't allow doesn't allow your work to be done. So if you want to make sure that things like nation states can't send an enforcement letter to a VPN provider and say, hey, who is this person? We see this traffic coming out of your VPN. Who is it? Which is something that happens all the time. There are some VPNs who don't keep logs. In other words, they don't have any way of complying with those. So if China or Russia or the United States or any other authoritarian government wants to go to a VPN provider and say, hand over your customer lists and your logs so that I can see who these people were who are trying to hide through your VPN, they aren't able to do that, right? Because they can't say no, but they can say we don't have it. It doesn't exist, right? So that's something to look for as VPNs that don't have logs. So, one of those is that's really popular is called Mulivad, Mulivad. They operate in an interesting way because you don't actually have to sign up. You don't have to give them any information about yourself. All you have to do is pay for the VPN account. For example, with Bitcoin or something, you can pay with cryptocurrency. And as long as that account is paid for, it can be used by anybody who has the account number. Think of it like a Swiss bank account, right? You just have an account number, and if you know the account number, you have access to it. So that's really interesting. There's also, there's more to do that. IAM4AM likes NordVPN. I've used them a lot. They have a really nice interface on their software where you can select what country you're going out of. So if you want to watch something that's only available in the UK on Netflix, you can connect to the UK and say, hey, I'm in the UK now. So you can travel around the world and look at the internet from different points of view too, which I think is something that IAM does quite a bit. You can connect to a server out of Russia and see what the media says there about the war in Ukraine. And then you can connect to a NATO state and see what the same story is there. You get different sides of the same conversation. And these are all things that VPNs are useful for. You can also use them to shop around for airline tickets and stuff like that, because you'll be offered different prices depending on who you are. So there's my little spiel on VPNs, I think. NordVPN, I haven't heard a ton of bad things about them. They aren't, for people that are hardline privacy advocates who don't accept any level of identification correlation. I've seen people say, oh, don't go to Nord because they have accounts. Okay, well, that just depends on what your level of tinfoil hatness is, I guess, and what you're doing. If I was, I'll put it this way. If I were reporting from within China on the abuses of the CCP and the genocide on the Uyghur population, I would not use NordVPN. I don't think you'd be able to anyway. They have their great firewall. that blocks out most things. Or Iran. If I'm, female in Iran, I probably would not use NordVPN. Things like that, where you have, anytime there's a nation state with unlimited resources and influence, then that's where you got to be careful about, okay, who holds logs, if you're paying for a VPN with your credit card, don't commit crimes, I guess, because that's pretty stupid. I saw someone who was arrested recently for extortion because they were trying to, I don't know exactly what it was, but basically it was an inside job, and they were trying to extort someone from with information they got from working with the company, and they used a VPN that they paid for with a credit card. And so as soon as law enforcement went to the VPN provider and said, "Hey, who is this?" they were like, "Well, it's paid for with this Visa card, so it's probably somebody related to them." These are all things you can think about if you're, a journalist or something. Logs. All VPNs do not have logs. There are definitely at least two that I can think of. One is Mullavad. The other one is I'll have to come back later and say what it is, because I don't remember at the moment, and I don't have I was just having a conversation about it with a friend of mine. I don't have my phone right now, but I'll look it up later, because they have actually been audited and confirmed not to have logs. As a VPN operator, you can choose to enable logs or to disable them. In fact, some of them go so far, this one that I can't think the name of right now, goes so far as to run all of their servers in RAM only. And so if you know about how RAM works in computers as opposed to like a hard drive, everything in memory or in RAM, if the computer gets turned off, it's all wiped. It's volatile memory. It doesn't stick around. So some of them even run RAM-only VPN servers, where if, let's say, there's a raid, right? Somebody, for example, Kim.com got raided by the FBI, even though he was in New Zealand. Hollywood convinced the FBI to raid a non-American's foreign property in New Zealand on the behalf of corporate entities, which was weird. Anyway, they raided his compound and stole all the servers and got evidence from it that showed that he was, or his customers at least, were hoarding films, right? And so all of that stuff was on hard drives. So as soon as they pulled the plug on the power, if it's not encrypted, it is available. And so if you run everything in RAM, if that happens, then no data is able to be retrieved. There's some caveats to that. It's specialized, but in general, that's how it works. Yep, RAM-only VPN servers. I'll look that up and post about it as a reply, because I forget their names. So yeah, that's VPNs in a nutshell. You don't have to worry about the system clock. It does generally work for your whole computer, but there are leaks if you don't have things like a kill switch, for example, or network. What do they call it? Kill switch, or some of them call it like network lock or something like that, depending on who it is. So that brings me to the next reply, which is what I really wanted to talk about. I love talking about it. I am for I am says, can't wait for this topic to unfold on your show. Will be valuable info. I hope you can demonstrate some of these techniques. Just a suggestion: change your title on YouTube to how to be more private, or how to use privacy tools for better clickbait. It'll drive more people to your channel, and then on to Den. Something that I want to do, that I've said I wanted to do, and I haven't made time to do, is non-live videos, even if it's just cutting segments out of a live video, something more concise. Because I cannot expect, like, I do this once a week, and then we also do World Blockchain Roundtable. This show's an hour or two. Roundtable is an hour and a half, 2 hours. The Den.DAO call is at least 30 minutes, usually, pushing 45 to 60. Super Happy Dragon Lucky is between 15 and 45 minutes usually. All of these are live, long-form broadcasts that have a bunch of information in it, but what did I just count up? 2, 4, 6 between like 6-7 hours a week. I cannot expect everyone to watch 7 hours a week of us talking long form, non-concise things, and then be able to just like take all the information out of it. That especially includes how to do certain things on Den. There's so many things on Den that we need like a little 30-second, maybe a 1-minute video that says how to do this one specific thing on Den. Like the DM situation I was talking about earlier, why they seem all out of whack. I explained that this morning, but I don't expect that many people are going to be watching this every week and happen to watch the 1 week whenever I explain that and then just know it, right? So it's a good point. I need to make videos that are like a little bit clickbaity, a little bit concise, a little bit to the point, and put those out. And I just haven't made the time to do it. I will pay someone to do it though. If you put it in the tutorials layer, I will shower you with matter and lot. But on to the point. Decentralization, techniques, information. Yeah. So what is decentralization? Is a pretty good question. Think about how most things have worked traditionally up until now, which is where somebody owns it or a centralized infrastructure is designed to manage it. The internet itself kind of relies on centralized servers that are in a certain spot, like I just mentioned with like Kim.com's situation, where his business was centralized and he had servers all in one building that were accessible by people. But more than that, just imagine, and this is a little bit philosophical maybe, but imagine as literally as a part of human evolution, right? As technology becoming a part of who we are as a species. The ability of network infrastructure, right? Communications, internet, right? Connectivity, networks to just exist as a part of nature, to just be out there, not dependent on a particular entity or a company or government supporting it, just part of nature. And how would that work? And that's kind of what decentralization is. And decentralization and privacy are two different things. Privacy tools have been around for a long time. But with decentralization techniques, and specifically with things like blockchain, with incentivized participation, you really can tie these things together in a way that's important and more secure and very, very strong. Take, for example, a really good network developed by, initially developed by the Navy Research Lab, I think it's called, a government entity anyway, the Onion Router, Tor, the Tor network, which is pretty commonly associated with like darknet markets and stuff like that, right? Really, it was created as a way to allow forward operating agents to communicate, to call home, to privately, securely, safely communicate with their handlers, stuff like that. It's a way to keep people safe from governments spying on them. And I'll try not to jump around too much here, but basically one of the ways that works is that if you connect to the Tor network, you go in to it from one point, and all of your communications are wrapped in layers of encryption. If you read descriptions, you'll hear it talked about like layers of an onion, and every server you hop through on the network unwraps a layer of the onion, and no one server that you go through can tell anything other than where it came from, the most previous server that it came from, and the very next step that it's going to. In other words, it can't look 2 steps in either direction, so it doesn't know where it originally came from, and it doesn't know where it's ultimately going. It can just see 1 step forward and 1 step back along the way. So you have this privacy network that is just doing that, and it's hosted by anybody who wants to run a node. And there's different types of nodes that you can run, and it is a decentralized network in that anybody can run these nodes, and in fact, it relies on volunteers running the network. It isn't organized by an entity who runs a bunch of servers that owns all of the servers, because you cannot design. It doesn't work that way. If everyone owned all the servers, if it were centralized, if it were organized by one company, like if it was a VPN provider and they, had a traditional infrastructure and they owned all the nodes. Well, if the same person owns all the nodes, then they can know where all the traffic's coming from and where it's going, right? Because if let's say you're sending messages through this network and each node is only supposed to know a little bit about the message. Well, if you own all the nodes, then you can track the entire routing, right? So it cannot be centralized and still work properly. So this was designed in a decentralized way, where because anybody can download and run this server infrastructure at home on a VPS that they rent, whatever they want to do, because of that, it lends to privacy, because in theory, the same entity is not owning all the hops, all the different points along the way. So we'll bring Gravity Crab back up, since it looks like you're done with your donuts right now.
Donuts?
Yeah, you had
bagels.
Bagels. Your bagel bites.
Well, they got about as much sugar. Oh, bagel bites! Damn you! Those are tasty for garbage. Did you like me screeching country roads into the chat box?
No, not at all.
Good. I love you. That's why.
So when you were out, I was just describing how Tor works.
I was going to say, I feel like you were talking about how Tor works, and I want to say that it sounded very much so like you were saying that the missile knows where it is because the missile knows where it isn't.
No, I was saying the missile knows where it is, where it came from, where it's going, but the network that it's riding on doesn't know any of that. You're going through a game of telephone where each person along the chain, let's say there's 10 people in the chain. In the middle, let's say you're right in the middle of that chain and you get a message passing through this game of telephone. All you know is the person that it came from that handed it to you, not who handed it to them or who handed it to them down the line, but the immediate one person who handed it to you and where it's going next. The person that you're handing it to next. You don't know where that person's going to who that person's going to hand it to or where it's ultimately going. All you know is the person right in front of you and right behind you in line. You don't know anything else about it, and it's all encrypted. So you can't tell where it came from, where it's going, or what's in it.
I can't believe you took my dumb missile joke and actually turned it into a decent analogy.
Yeah.
Actually, I can.
And to sum up, basically what I was saying is the only way that can work is decentralization. Because if if the same person owned all of those nodes or all those people, then obviously you can just do the math and see where it came from. So decentralization makes it possible for those networks to exist. The problem with that is that although anybody can do that and anybody can run a node, it's free to run a node. It doesn't cost you anything. There is no scarcity, right? So in theory, if you had enough resources, like if you were a nation state and you had unlimited resources, you could spin up thousands and thousands of nodes and start getting way more information than any one person is supposed to have, including owning all the nodes in a chain that someone's communicating through when they think they're private, but you own the exit node, you own the entrance node, and you own all the nodes in between. There's nothing stopping that from happening.
That breaks everything.
And that breaks everything. So it's a fantastic invention, but that's its major flaw, is it doesn't have any safeguards against that type of attack. Or it doesn't really have any safeguards against that, nothing meaningful. So when you fast forward a little bit, and this is where for me, the light bulb really came on with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is obviously really cool money that's awesome, and it's resilient to fuckery, right? It gives incentives for people to act properly and good on the network, and it basically pays people to secure the network and to make sure that it's properly decentralized. That concept can be applied to anything. Right now, everybody's caught up in charts and money and number go up and down and stuff like that. But
it's
the
easy
idea,
to forget that it's the technology and not just money.
Right.
And it's the technology is wild.
Right. And the idea with Bitcoin is to allow open access to a network that cannot be censored and is resilient to censorship, I guess, right? You can't block somebody or prevent them necessarily from sending or receiving money, for transacting peer-to-peer, right? It is difficult to stop somebody from handing off cash in a back alley to pay for something, right? And they wanted to bring that same attribute to digital currency. And you cannot do that when it's a centralized system, because if it's a centralized system, they can just say, nope, this account cannot transact. You are blocked from Facebook. You cannot send money. You cannot pay for food, whatever it is.
Do not pass go.
Mm-hmm. So this is being demonstrated with money, which is the hardest thing to demonstrate it with, arguably. And since it's been proven,
human nature.
Since it's been proven to be effective, it's working for Bitcoin. What else can you use it for? Well, one thing that you can use it for is things like that whole Tor network I just talked about. What if, instead of any jackass being able to fire up a node and run it and potentially be a bad actor, right? Either you're collecting data that you're not supposed to collect, going through it and correlating it and de-anonymizing people, or you're selling that information to someone who does. What if there was scarcity? And what I mean by that is you have to have collateral to be able to run a node. And not only that, but the longer that you're running this node, and the longer the whole network can audit you and challenge your node to make sure that it's acting properly within certain parameters. The longer you do that, the more you actually get paid out by the network as a reward for being a good actor, for not de-anonymizing traffic, for not
being a scumbag.
Being a scumbag, right? What if you could anonymously incentivize anybody who wanted to participate? It's still open to anyone. Anybody can still pick up the software, it's open source, and run it, right? In any country they're in, if they have the expertise to do it, if they know how to run a local server. Usually there's scripts where you just have to fire the script and it does it all for you. But still, anybody can do it. Anybody who knows how to keep a computer running with maybe a battery backup so it's always available can do this if they want to. The main difference is you have to have some collateral, right? And you get incentivized, you get paid by the network at intervals to keep it running. So now what you have is a system where if somebody wanted to attack that and they wanted to run 100,000 nodes so that they owned most of the traffic on the network, they would have to spend a bunch of money buying up all this collateral, because each node they open requires a certain amount of collateral to run it. With the Tor network, the only incentive that exists is the incentive to be a bad actor. The only way that you can make money or benefit or profit from it is de-anonymizing people and selling that data, or somehow using it to exploit what should not be exploited. With this new way of doing things, you can take the same concept and you can create a balancing incentive against that, which is to be a good actor, and also use this scarcity of collateral to restrict, like to make people risk real assets basically to run a node. So that's where blockchain and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and stuff like that can start being applied to existing technologies. Like decentralization existed before Bitcoin. But the scarcity And the network incentives that come along with that really do a lot to make sure that even though it's anonymous people running the network, even though anybody can do it and it's open to good and bad people, it makes it far less likely that someone's going to own everything, that kind of thing. Because there's only so much collateral to go around. Yeah. And if you're buying up all that collateral, you're going to see it in the value of that collateral. It's going to get more and more expensive. If there's only, let's say the collateral is something like Monero, which is an anonymous form of Bitcoin. And it's traded, anybody can buy it up and they can use that collateral to stake to a node to run it on this network. Well, if you're trying to attack the network, you're going to have to buy up so much of this collateral, so much of this Monero style, like anonymous coin, that the value of it's going to go through the roof. And the very people you're trying to attack are going to be enriched. And because they are enriched, they now can afford to develop new solutions to guard against you. So you're literally enriching your enemy in order to attack them. And that's a safeguard against fuckery. And it's beautiful. It's natural. And it's back to what I was talking about before, where it creates a system where you have a network that sort of just exists organically as a part of human evolution over time. This technology becomes part of who we are. And for any alien looking down on Earth to see how these little ants are operating, it looks like magic. We can just communicate with each other across the globe. We just have these networks that exist, not owned by anybody, but operated by everybody. So to me,
about the aliens.
Yeah, we can get into that for sure. Yeah. To me, that's the beauty of decentralization and incentives and scarcity and marketplaces and things like that on these networks.
Good speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about the alien.
So, yeah.
So apparently some aliens crashed in a guy's backyard and a cop lost his mind for a few minutes about it.
Yeah, so we'll come back. So there's my intro to why I'm so fascinated about decentralization and all that stuff. We'll come back to that in a minute. I'll share some actual tools that use this stuff. But let's talk about aliens. Let's mix it up.
Yeah, what the hell happened there? So apparently there was some kind of like a document that was released a while back, recently or whatever, that said that we have a spaceship or some shit. And then like an alien, I guess, crashes in this guy's backyard. And the cops get this crazy call, and he's like, they're looking at us. They're standing tall. They're looking at us. And then, like, the cop gets there, and there's a big-ass crater in the yard, and they're all freaking out.
Yeah, I wrote about this in the aliens lair. I have two posts. One is the original one, and the other is an update. So the aliens
As per
lair.
usual, you know more about this than I do, so please fill me in on what this crazy shit is.
I don't know anything, man. Nobody knows anything.
I'm down for it, though. I kind of like it.
The aliens layer, by the way, if you have any lot, I don't think that video is enabled. So I just put a photo of a screenshot of the 911 call.
The 911 call.
And then I link to it, this video here. So there's a video link in this post. But some interesting things come out of the video, and I sort of summed them up here with a description of there were two alleged ETs. So here's what happened was. Apparently.
Yeah, what happened was.
Yeah. There was a blue-green fireball in the sky, which there is some video for.
And the cop saw it that had to respond to the call.
A cop that saw that, which is why they took it seriously. Like, you can hear one of the guys, there's body cam footage of the cops. One of them saying, look, I'll be honest with you, the only reason I'm even looking into this is because one of our other people actually did see the same thing. So we're going to check it out. There's ring camera footage that does not show that, but you can hear a sound that they describe as, they say it's the sound that the fireball made, basically. It like landed in the backyard and it sounded like this.
Hell yeah.
And so the kid who's on the video is saying there was a thing in the backyard that landed and there were two ETs. They were 9 or 10 feet tall. And this is where I just wrote down basically what all I heard from the 911 call, from the cops that were there talking to the kid, and from like their body cam footage, and from the kid made a YouTube video where he laid out, like, here's what happened. So his family was all there. It wasn't just him. 9 or 10 feet tall. There were two of them. They were gray or green in color. They had large eyes and a large mouth. And at one point, he says the eyes are like shiny or something. So large eyes, large mouth, 10 feet tall-ish, gray-green in color, 100%, he says, obviously non-human. He's like, look,
obviously.
this is gonna sound crazy. I swear I'm not making it up. It's not an animal. It's not human. It's 100% not human. And they're like 10 feet tall, and they are like, you know what I mean? This is like from the 911 call. At one point, he says when they went out there to look at him, his brother was saying, look behind the forklift over there. They have a bunch of equipment in the backyard. Look behind the forklift over there. He looked at him, and he froze, kind of like sleep paralysis kind of thing. And then when he looked away from him, it went away. So I wrote that down as a description. They heard footsteps on top of the house for a minute, which would suggest that they had the ability to climb on top of a single family home, at least.
Oh my God.
Maybe they're, I was like, okay, what if I'm an alien? I crash somewhere. Like, where the fuck am I? Probably going to climb on top of something and look around, right? And look over the houses.
So you can get your bearings.
Get your bearings, figure out where you are, right? So that's, and then the last thing I put in here is that they were traveling in a vehicle capable of vertical takeoff and landing that does not seem to use traditional thrust engines. And I said that because there's a photo of a circle in the backyard that he was saying is where the ship landed or something, right? And it was just like it was like a nicely formed ring circle in the ground. And there wasn't like a bunch of dust kicked up. It wasn't blast marks or anything like that. So that's what was reported. And then, so this was May 1st. So then there's like...
Oh, hold on. Let's pause for just a sec here.
Yeah.
If you're in this situation, okay, let's say this happens to you. Do you stay inside or do you go outside and be like, please, I just want to ask you a question?
Well, they went outside. I
would have done the same shit. I'd have been like, please just don't paralysis my brain. Just talk to me for like 5 minutes. That's all I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I am has a good point. Aliens in Vegas. Hotel in Vegas is a pyramid. Just saying.
Oh my God. Everybody gives me shit for this because they'll be like, wait, you think there's some validity to the thing in Vegas, but you don't think aliens did anything with history? It's like, those are two vastly different concepts. Like if aliens were going to start fucking with us, now would be the time, seeing as somebody keeps launching shit into space every day, just for the record. So, yeah. That's my caveat to that.
Yeah. My theory is that there's this concept known as Rulian space, I think. And it's very similar to what people might think of as multiple dimensions taking up the same space, where the aliens might be right here on Earth. They're just in completely different, you can call them dimensions if it helps, but basically different states of the universe, different states of existence where
maybe even
you just can't see each other. You know what I mean?
Different time period acting at the same time,
Maybe. And so my theory is that when we started detonating nuclear bombs, that creates some sort of bridge between them where we may have like fucked something up in their world, right? That's right here on Earth. It's overlapping dimensions. It's in different Rulian convergences here on Earth.
Are you writing a Hideo Kojima game right now?
No, I've never played that.
Metal Gear Solid?
Oh, I played one of them. Yeah, two of them. So, yeah, maybe that's what happened, to where we fucked some shit up and they're like, oh my God, what happened? What is this? And they started looking into us to figure out, and then they found us. So they're more advanced, so they can find us. You know what I mean?
They're like, oh, these dicks.
Yeah. So maybe that's what's happening, is they found us because they're more advanced. And we just happened to like screw up some of their shit with our nukes whenever we started detonating them, because it bridged whatever this, multi-dimensional thing is. Anyway.
Which sounds like a thing we would do as people.
Yeah.
Screw up an entire other culture just by existing in our horrible warlike way.
Yeah, that's a little bit out. That's a little bit out there, but
aliens landed in this guy's backyard. I don't think much is out there at this point.
Back to the point.
Right, continue. Get on with it.
Aliens in the backyard seem pretty legit. Seem pretty interesting. Seem pretty potentially real.
I'm pretty damn skeptical about most stuff, but there was some solid legitness to those guys' voices.
So then, as I am pointed out, It seemed real, not so much now. The circle, I think, was made by a vehicle. The backyard is a storage parking lot. So I've got another post in the same layer as an update. Here's a picture of that backyard with the circle. And the initial images that were put out were basically just focused on exactly this, and it was taken in the dark, and there were floodlights. Wasn't daytime, and so yeah, okay, it looked like a circle. But then if you look over the whole backyard, there's a bunch of circles, right? And there's a bunch of long. You see, look like RV trailers here and stuff like that. A bunch of trailers, and if you've ever backed up a trailer, if you've ever driven trailers around and stuff like that, they make these sort of patterns. You can see them around the shack over here. These double wheel
that's
patterns and stuff.
Mark.
Yeah. So this is the actual yard where the circles happened. And so, okay, that's just some circles. It seems like, okay, they do look a little bit different than the other ones, right? But it's a little bit different than what we originally saw, or a different perspective anyway. In addition, the family's gone dark.
Yeah, I would do.
They set up all of these interviews with whoever wanted to do interviews with them. And they've been talking to a bunch of people. They said at one point that there was a follow-up visit. This is where it could go in two different directions. There was a follow-up visit, they said, from the police, where they came back after the initial call. A couple of days later, I think they said it was. And they said they set up surveillance cameras to try to, see if anything came back, and they interviewed them again, and yada, yada, yada. Well, the local police says that never happened. They never did that. So either somebody was dressed up as the police saying, we're the cops, we're just here to help. Let's put up cameras and interview you, right? Men in Black kind of thing. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. So either it's Men in Black, people that don't exist, or it's UFO hunters impersonating a police officer trying to get something.
Or it's a hoax.
Or it's a hoax. Right.
Can you use some Occam's razor here?
Yeah, right. So the most simple explanation is that it's a hoax. Interesting timing. It came right after that government official. So you know about the guy that said, hey, we got aliens?
Yeah, I know a little on that one. I don't know a whole lot on that one. I know this story way more.
Right around the same time as that guy came out with all of that. Which is, just coincidence maybe, or maybe that prompted them. Maybe that prompted them, since there was a bunch of news about it and people were interested in the topic. Maybe that prompted them to do the hoax thing. Oh, people will believe this because the topic's hot right now. Maybe. But anyway, either it was a hoax, it got out of hand. There were people were staking out their house.
Jesus.
There's even a video I linked to here. I think it's this one here, this YouTube video, yeah. They interview an ex-Vegas police officer who is currently staking out the house.
We cannot see that video.
Who admits that he does drive a black SUV.
Wow.
So it's like, all right, that's probably, intimidating. Get a bunch of black SUVs. I don't know. So he says that
doesn't sound legal.
They're not home anymore. There's no lights on the house. They are gone.
They moved.
Yeah. So either the hoax got out of hand, they got way too much attention, they're dipping out until shit cools down, or
the aliens took them.
They were taken.
I'm gonna say they got taken.
Right? That's
the aliens took them.
That's the fun one, right? Maybe not fun for them, but that's the more fun one to talk about.
We have to have fun.
And as somebody who wants to believe, I'll follow that path and see what happens. Right. Maybe they were taken. I don't know. Maybe there is something in between where they weren't taken by aliens, but maybe the government has them and keeping them safe.
Oh, the government. Yeah, because the government loves to keep people safe. That's their MO most of the time. The government took them to the desert, and we're just like, hey, you guys saw some stuff. Bah! To every single one of them. That's how it went.
I've seen Casino. I know how it works in Vegas.
Wow, I cannot believe you knew that I was going with Casino. Well done.
Nice.
We just watched that the other day.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's
good.
a long one. It's a good
Oh,
one.
but it was on Laserdisc too. Speaking of which, I saw Jacob Wynn's
Perfect.
comment about Laserdisc stuff. So I love that we
Yeah.
sparked some Laserdisc interest in his brain.
Yeah, I'm
Also-
inspired. I got to get my collection ramped up.
Oh, dude, let's do it. I got a Laserdisc player for you if you want one.
I love the idea that we're on like the alien version of an Attenborough documentary.
Look at the people. These people over here have launched an invasion into another country with no real prompting or reason. Look at how they point fingers about the dam. Oh my god.
I like this theory too, that aliens are just AI that are highly evolved, like Battlestar Galactica type stuff.
I've got an AI thing we have to talk about. But so aliens though, what was the guy with the I need to know more about the guy who had the document.
Yeah, the documents guy. So the documents guy produced no documents, first of all.
Okay.
And he did an interview with, I don't know, I saw something with him on The Hill, but it was a different one that he did the initial interview with. Anyway, so he's positioning himself as a whistleblower. He did apparently have a spot in an agency, in a government agency a DOD agency that looks into UFOs and stuff, or what are they called now? UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Yeah, unidentified aerial bullshit.
Yeah. So
Alien
legitimately, he
around.
does seem to work in that field. And he does have what's called an TSSCI clearance, top secret / secret compartmented information, which is the same clearance that I had whenever I was in doing Tomahawk stuff and cruise missile stuff in the military. That gives you access to specifically what you're working on and nothing else, right? So it's not like you can have a TS clearance and all of a sudden you can access all TS information. That's not.
You certainly have the database at your fingertips.
Yes. Yeah. The SCI part of it is where it's compartmented information, right? You keep it away from people that don't need to know about it. And so everybody can do their one little thing without everybody knowing everything. So he had that clearance. He worked in that department. So apparently he had access to that specific type of information. Now, what he says is that there is a different, what would you call it? Department? A different organization that does similar stuff, but that he was not a part of. But he did rub elbows with them, which this part follows for me, because I would do that all the time where, like when I was in the Navy, I would hang out with the people that worked in signal exploitation. They had a space with a bunch of computers hooked up to antennas and shit, and they would play with information and do information specialist type stuff.
That sounds cool as shit.
Yeah. So I would hang out with them primarily because I had a high enough clearance to hide in their space when I didn't want to do work.
You ass.
So I would just go sleep behind one of their computers for a while if I needed a nap. And then I would emerge hours later and be like, oh, I'm back. Like, where were you? Oh, I was doing things with stuff. You don't have the clearance. You don't have the clearance to know.
Yeah, that's on a need-to-know basis. I would use that shit all the time.
So that kind of thing happens. This is the part where, like, okay, that's plausible, because that happens. I know firsthand. That happens all the fucking time, where people, hang out with other people that have the same clearance, but they don't really talk about what they do, right? Like they don't. This doesn't mean that they know everything about what the other people do. So what he says is he's rubbing a lot of elbows with a lot of people from different departments or whatever. And some of them start confiding in him that there is a UFO crash recovery team that is operational, that they have recovered vehicles that have been crashed. They've been doing this for decades, right? Going back to when like Bob Lazar was disclosing Area 51 stuff. Like they've been doing this basically since the 50s, 60s or something like that. And not only did they recovered vehicles that were made by non-human intelligences, Not saying they're from outer space, but he's saying they're non-human. So that implies aliens.
I mean, they're not the Chuds. So.
But also that they've recovered bodies. Now he also...
I hadn't heard that part.
Yeah. So he also says... Well, he doesn't say... Okay, and it's weird the way he says things. Here's where it gets... Here's where it gets iffy to me. He's not saying that they recovered bodies. He's saying that, well, logic would follow that if you're recovering crafts, sometimes you would also find bodies of the craft that crashed, which is
logical, yeah.
Which is logical, yes. But what if it was a drone like we have? You know what I mean? So he's not saying we got bodies. He's just saying we probably have bodies. More importantly, though, when you hear him talk about this in the interview, it's always somebody told me this, somebody confided in me this, someone revealed to me this.
I'm going to go conspiracy deep real quick. Would you not do that if you were trying to cover your ass, though?
Well, here's the thing, dude. He has written permission from the DOD to do that interview.
Oh.
They just told him he's not allowed to reveal any secret information or documents or proof that is classified, but that he can talk about it all he wanted.
He just implied that it was there.
Or do you know about the okay, so you know about Roswell?
Yeah, of course.
And there's a dude that was really popular in the UFO community. I forget his name, but basically he was fed information from either the Army or somebody, DOD though. He was fed information from the military or from the government, specifically to get him to talk about UFOs and stuff, about how there was UFO evidence. They planted evidence on UFOs with this guy who was trusted by the community, who listened to him to spread all the stuff about UFOs. Turns out they were actually covering for a different program. They wanted to distract from an actual secret program they were developing by saying, oh, it was all, yeah, tell them it was UFOs. Tell them it was aliens.
Why does that? That's so goddamn clever.
So they're like, yeah, go. Here's some official documents too. Just go leak this, that kind of thing. So that absolutely happened. So it sounds to me like that's plausible here, where he keeps talking about like all these different people confided in me and told me all this information. And then he got a letter from like the DOD saying, yeah, go do this interview and talk about all this secret shit. Just don't provide any real documentation or evidence. So that seems fishy.
Yeah, that's strange.
But he does have a date with Congress because he filed properly as a whistleblower, whatever that means. And he apparently did hand over documents to Congress that are classified that he can't show the public, but he can talk to Congress about. So there's I don't know what you call it, an interview, a discussion, a meeting with Congress, because what his whole thing is that we have this program as a crash recovery team. It is being kept from Congress, which is not supposed to happen. In a similar way, like if you watch Independence Day, where the president's like, "Oh, we don't have any of that," and somebody goes,
and they're like,
"Sir,
yeah, we do.
We just haven't told you." That kind of thing. And he claims that all of that's real, and it's being held from Congress because these agencies are what some people would describe as the deep state, meaning they are lifetime employees of the government, and they see the president and Congress people as transitory. They just come in and out every 4 years, 6, 8 years, whatever. And, they don't want to like have that many people know about it, so they just don't let them know. Every time there's a new politician that gets voted in, they don't just automatically tell them. Yeah, so he's saying, it's being held, it's being kept secret from them. And
I'm here for it. Like, if that is what's happening, like, let's learn about it. Like, tell us about it, which they wouldn't anyways, but hold that thought.
I Am for I Am says, Bob Lajar seems legit and his story is consistent. I agree with that. There's some minor inconsistencies, I'll say, that I would expect any human to have. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's at this point, like this has been, I forget when it was it the 80s that this was like big news or something? I don't remember. I'm not that old. But I've read up on it since, and I've listened to interviews and I've looked at the evidence, and he's been consistent. And things, like I'm not really sure how much I'm buy into the element 115 thing, even though, okay, technically it does exist. Sure. But there's been a lot of things that he said that ended up being true. A lot of things that initially, speaking of Bob Lazar, a lot of things that he said that were ridiculed in the beginning, but ended up being completely, he was vindicated years later, right? And when you're vindicated years later, people typically don't know about it. It's not hot news at the time. So yeah, he's got really specific details. He's got two different, two of the things, like people were saying that he never worked at JPL or wherever it was, and he never went to whatever university it was, both of which records have been found now that show that he was there, which seems like somebody tried to scrub that he was, even there at all, which is suspect. That's weird. Bob Lazar is an interesting story because it sounds fantastical, but he talks about the same shit. He talks about like the UFO recoveries, that they're old, first of all. Nothing that this new guy that I heard him say suggested that it was new crashes. Lazar was saying these are old. These are not new. At least I think that's what he was saying. And he also, from the beginning, was saying that one of the issues was this compartmented information program, which is totally how that works. One hand doesn't talk to the other hand. They don't mix information. So it was hard from a reverse engineering point of view, from his point of view, like it was hard to reverse engineer stuff because of that. Like you didn't have all the information. So yeah, it's all really interesting. I don't know what's real. I just know that it's all very interesting, and I'm not dismissing the very logical idea that we're not alone in the universe. So yeah, that's what the guy said. Now you're up to speed, mostly.
I'm glad I'm up to speed. Like, that's awesome. I appreciate you being the person that tells me all the cool shit. So, you want to hear something insane?
Always.
So, as we know, ChatGPT is crazy. You can have a full-blown freaking conversation with your own personal HAL at this point if you want. So some people, I can't remember which university it is, but some people wanted, a bunch of repressed nerds wanted a better way to try and get laid. So they created this thing.
Sounds legit.
There's also this lovely term for the kids these days called Riz.
Called what?
It's called Riz.
Riz?
Apparently, it's R-I-Z-Z. Apparently, It's just like, it's the same exact thing as game. It's like if you've got game, that.
Oh, like charisma.
So they made
Riz.
this. Oh my god!
Okay.
Jackie, the Riz thing is because charisma.
It
I
has
didn't
to
get
be.
that. I'm way too old these days. So basically, they made this thing and pumped in like 300 of their favorite like fictional characters, and your whole goal is to see if you can score. So you just start up your little chat.
So you practice on the AI.
Oh yeah, and like you can't just go in hot. Like you can't just be like, "Yo, I've got a meat popsicle. What's up?" Because they'll straight up be like, "Go fuck yourself" and block you.
Nice shoes, wanna fuck?
Yeah, nice shoes, wanna fuck. So I'm on like day 2 now of trying to sleep with Hermione Granger. So I'll tell you how that goes. But it's wild. Like you just sit there and you're like, "Hey there, what's up?" And all of a sudden you've got like this long ass conversation, and like it's a bit uncanny. And also sometimes the AI just like perfect, AI usually goes off the fucking rails. So like yesterday I was talking to it and I was just like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something," and it was just like, "You then say that you know who killed her parents." And I was like, wait, hold on. No, that's not what I'm here for. I had to like reel back on that. But yeah, if any of our viewers want to go and try to sleep with Tifa Lockhart,
that's fascinating.
It's wild.
We were talking about
Foghorn,
AI.
Foghorn Leghorn is an option. Side note. Oh, Joe Biden. Oh my God. So Biden's on there, and I popped up into him, and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah.
you want to tell me?" I got the most Biden response. I was like, "Hey, you want to tell me about Hunter's laptop?" And he was just like, "Oh, I'm not at liberty to discuss my son's personal life, but I'm happy that you showed interest in my family."
Happy that you showed interest in my family.
I was like, "That's the most Joe thing I've ever heard."
Yeah, that's just kind of like canned political response. Like,
Oh God, yeah.
I'm not going to give you what you want, but I'm going to pretend to be happy with you as a person and give you something. You know, try to give you
something to go
give you
on.
something. Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you asked me that. Fuck off.
We were talking last week on World Blockchain about AI. Pretty good episode. Go back and watch it if you want. It's interesting. One of the things that I think, so I've seen a demo of, this was Skyrim. It was a Skyrim mod where they were using GPT style AI. More generically, you can refer to them as large language models. There's different versions of them.
Oh, it's where you can like talk to them.
Yeah, LLMs. So GPT is one. Google Bard is one of them. The company that released Stable Diffusion, which is the AI art that I was playing with, that I have been playing with, they have an LLM now that's open source that's out. I don't even have the hardware to run it. I would need different a little bit. I need to spend money on hardware to run that, but you can run it at home. It's open source. Anyway, they made a Skyrim mod, an NPC mod from this, where instead of like Bethesda or some quest creator having to script dialogue between you and the NPCs, where you have like pre-selectable responses, and then each of those responses has one or more responses that the NPC can give you as like an interactive type thing. Instead, you can free-form type to the characters in the game.
Wait, is this out already? Or is it just a concept?
It's a concept. It's a demo. I think it is out, but it's in demo form. I've never used it. I've just watched a YouTube video of someone demoing it, and it was working. It was a real thing.
Skyrim now.
And so you could literally, instead of having a bunch of things that you had options of what to say to the person, you could approach any NPC and you could say whatever you wanted to them, and it would interpret it in the context of the Skyrim world, and it would know about the world and the goings on, and it would remember also. And so as it went along and interacted with other people, so you could really talk about anything you wanted, and you would get a response that was contextual from the NPCs that seemed legit, which is way closer to what like a tabletop RPG experience would be, where you have a dungeon master who's able to make shit up on the fly that matches the lore and makes sense and guide you through and that kind of thing.
This is crazy, dude. Like,
yeah, it's nuts. Yeah.
So there isn't like a full version of this yet that you can download that I can see yet, but there are several companions on the Nexus that are set up that way. This is wild.
So these would all need to access over the network. It would need to access some LLM model, unless they have something that's pared down to run locally. But
that's insane.
It is getting to the point where you can run it locally, and it is absolutely going to be part of the game at some point. So, pretty interesting.
Pretending the thing. That's insane, though, dude. Like, I've seen I saw that there was something about that through the ether before Reddit exploded. And I hadn't seen much about it. And since then, it used Respark to that. So apparently people are saying the companion version is really cool in VR because it's like ultimate immersion. So, Jackie, I'm going to spend most of my evening upstairs.
So is it like speech to text with the VR to your companion? So you can talk to them, or you still have to type somehow?
That part. I assume that you can you could probably use a mic to do it for speech to text.
Yeah.
It's the Skyrim modding community. They figure out ways to do shit that's arguably insane.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
it's gonna be interesting.
I'm okay with it. I think it's cool.
Also, I was going to ask you about this. I haven't watched it yet, but apparently there was some big release for Starfield. There was like some big 30 saying about it.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday.
Was it good?
Yeah,
Good
it's
stuff?
fantastic. Yeah.
Okay, I'll watch it later. The other thing I wanted is more important than Starfield, believe it or not. Did you see the stuff for Final Fantasy?
No.
There's a
What
bunch
about?
of there was a the games convention a couple of days ago, or the big games show, Games Live or whatever. They showed like 10 minutes or so of the next part of Final Fantasy
Oh,
Remake,
really?
the open world, and
I have
the
not seen
scale
that.
is, dude, the scale looks like it's crazy. So you basically, instead of having like the world map like you normally would have, you just walk over the world, which is really cool. It's just open world instead.
Mhm.
So, but like the size of stuff is crazy. Like at one point, you can see the High Wind sitting up on top of a basically like a launch area, and it's
That's what I was
enormous.
curious about the most, because in the original game, you still could walk over the world. It was open world, but the scale was pretty small.
Yeah,
You
but the
could
scaling's
walk from
pretty
one
cool
side of
from
the
what I can
continent
see.
to the other side in just a couple of minutes, basically. That kind of thing.
And it was more like the top-down view, like we normally got for 3Ds, right?
Mhm. Yeah, it
But
was.
this one, it's more like, nope, you just walk around like you would in Skyrim.
That's perfect. That's what I wanted.
And
for
it looks
sure.
good.
Yeah.
It looks good. Also, all the characters, apparently, like in the other version that you've played, I still haven't played it, but apparently they're very aware of their surroundings. So, like, is it Eris or Aerith?
I call her Eris, but it depends on what version of the game you played first.
Oh, so it's your fault that I call her that. So basically, she, like, I was watching some video of it, and she sees like a log at one point, and just goes and like, walks across the log for fun while she's following you around.
Yeah,
It
there is
seems like it's gonna be
environmental
awesome.
interactions like that. That's what I liked about when I played the first installment on PS4. That's what I liked about it the most, because if the whole first part of the game, the first game, is going to be all within Midgar, then you damn well better flesh out Midgar way more than you get in the original game, which they did. And there's a lot of environmental stuff too, where like people respond to you as you're walking by. They'll talk shit about your big sword. They'll talk about Avalanche. They'll talk about the latest news.
They'll talk
They'll
shit
talk
about your big sword.
Yeah.
Man, I just can't. You know me. I can't get behind playing it if it's not the whole damn game.
Yeah.
I want to. So now that we've got this next chunk coming out, maybe I'll say screw it and buy like whatever 2-pack they decide to sell for $100,000.
Yeah, or
But
just like play it a little bit at a time. You don't have to binge it over the course of one weekend as well.
yeah, I know, but like I want to. It's Final Fantasy. Once you start, you'll want to
I'm
finish.
halfway through. I'll put it this way, man. I was pretty fulfilled by it as a game in itself. I'm halfway through playing it again in New Game Plus. They have a New Game Plus mode. It's like extra hard mode. And
Right.
that mode is interesting because it makes you learn how to use the materia system way more adeptly than you would normally have to use it. Because, for example, you cannot use items. No potions, no ether, nothing.
I bet that's a bitch.
It's a bitch until you start getting like clever ways to use materia and link them together where you're like, all right, as long as I save this for like in case I need it, as long as I don't go too heavy on, using magic all the time by all my party members, maybe you invest in your weapons a little bit more because you can actually, similar to Final Fantasy X where you had the grid sphere, the weapons have their own grid spheres, and each individual weapon has a grid sphere. So you can improve and tinker up your weapons and stuff like that. You can add, for example, more materia slots to them, things like that. So there's a lot of more stuff to do. But
A lot of stuff.
I would prefer to have the whole game. I'm not saying I wouldn't.
I was
I'm
going to
just
say,
saying, yeah.
you have an ever so slight amount of rose-tintedness to it as well. And
Yeah.
everybody seems to, because like it's apparently fantastic, right? I mean, nobody has really much bad to say about it. Much bad ever. But Final Fantasy VII is arguably your favorite game of all time, correct?
Yeah.
So no matter what iteration of it you get, you're going to like it in some way.
Yeah. Because I've played it a bunch of times. I've got a lot of here's the thing, man, is the whole game exists already and it's out there. I can go play it
I could
again
just
if I
go
want
play
to.
it if I wanted to.
Yeah. And so if they're making more stuff, that's just more stuff. You know, I'm not going to complain that there's not as much stuff as I want all at once. Fine, give me the new stuff and let me know when you get the next stuff ready. Like, I'm sold. Take my money. I have a PS4 that I only bought because of Final Fantasy VII, because I'm ridiculous, which means that I'm going to buy a PS5 just so I can play the second installment.
Hey, I bought a Switch specifically to play Breath of the Wild, and I have not touched it since. So
that game,
and I haven't even bought Tears of the Kingdom yet. I've seen that you can apparently emulate it really well with better frame rates. So that might be how I play Top. But you know.
Breath of the Wild is also the only game I've ever played on Switch. I've played a little bit of the new, what's the robot shoot out of my arm thing that's not Mega Man?
Oh God, ARMS?
No. Metroid, the new Metroid game.
Oh yeah, Metroid. Why did I think of Wild Arms? Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I played the new Metroid game a little bit. It's good. It's hard. It's Nintendo hard, which is what it's supposed to be. But it's good. But yeah.
My coworker just said if Final Fantasy is final, then why do they keep pumping out new ones? Because it saved the company and it was their final shot.
That is the correct answer. They thought it was probably going to be the last one if it didn't work out.
I am proud to own a copy of that. It's one of my favorite NES games that I have, and it sucks to play.
I never played it.
Don't play it. It sucks.
Earliest one I played was 4. And it's
really?
Yeah. It's either 4 or 6.
Though. You played through 6, which means you technically played through 3.
Yeah. I get mixed up on which ones are which. So 3 and 6 are the same one, right?
Yep, same one. We were just too dumb to have it at the time, apparently. We got Mystic Quest instead.
I lied. It wasn't 4. It was 6.
So, like, you know that we didn't get Final Fantasy 3 until it was Final Fantasy 6 for us, because they genuinely, much like with Mario too, they thought we were too stupid for it, so they gave us Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which is, oh my God, you should watch a review of it. Basically, imagine you're the weak character no matter what. Your companions are always better than you, and there's like such a dumb story to it, and like it's like slapstick humor. I have a copy of that too, and it's bad. But good we got Mystic Quest instead.
Yeah, I never played that. I don't even know if I've heard of that one. I am for enemies. Take it easy, man. Have a wonderful Wednesday yourself.
Oh, I miss having you on the show.
He'll be back.
I know.
No, I never played Mystic Quest. I never played anything prior to Final Fantasy VI, I think. But 6 is really good. Like 6 is really good to me.
6 is probably, aside from 9, 6 is probably my favorite other than 9. Oh God, what's the earliest?
7, 8, 9, 10. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Yeah, actually,
I liked all of those really, really well.
I like 10 too as well, even though everybody hated it.
Never played 10-2.
I like spear hunting with boobs. That was the whole point.
I never played 11, which was online, I think, right?
Was that the first online one? Yeah, because then 14 fixed it.
I played 14 as a pre-order, and I hated it. But then they fired everyone and made it again, and it apparently is good now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Apparently, the Realm Reborn thing.
No, that's not 14. Is that 14? No, that's not 14. Is it? Is it 12? Is it 14? I don't remember
12
now.
Is single player. Why do we remember this? We shouldn't remember this.
Yeah, 12 is single player, and 12 is the one where you could automate responses, so you could just like kind of walk through battle and they would automatically fight stuff as you walk through. That was the first one where you could see the monsters as you approach them, I think. Which I'm not against, but I'm also not on board with. It was different. It wasn't the same, yeah. And then 15 was okay. It was very much
like the lightning ones.
Yeah, that was 15, right? No, that was 13.
No, 13. And then 13. Lightning was in those. And then we had 15 was that open world one where you were not.
Yeah. So I never played 15. Cool. I played 13, but it was like a corridor shooter for a long time until you got out of this floating sphere thing that you're in. Yeah, it wasn't great. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. It's not great. Been a while. Been a while. All right. So I promised to mention some specific tools because we gotta wrap up and get out of here at some point. But I want to talk a little bit about the topic again, about decentralization and privacy tools, because I gave my little religious speech about decentralization. Now let me talk about some privacy tools. One of those networks I was talking about is called Oxen. It's a fork of Monero. and it uses these Monero-style privacy coins to incentivize nodes, exactly like I was talking about. So that whole time I was basically describing what is known as LokiNet. And LokiNet is, you can think of it literally as the Tor network, but all the nodes are incentivized by blockchain incentivized service nodes or blockchain powered service nodes. And all of these nodes have to put up collateral, and they earn rewards by not being shitbags. And so you're on a network that is more secure by nature, not necessarily more secure in practice because it is not as heavily used as the Tor network. And with mass adoption comes a larger anonymity set. And all that means is the more people that use it, the more safe it is to use, the more secure it is. So there are some arguments to be had about, because it's so new and there's so few people using it, that it's easier to, it's less secure potentially, right? Less private potentially. That I'm not academic enough to speak intelligently about, to be honest with you. But what I will say is that it exists. It's a really good model. It works fantastically well. You can use it as a VPN because it routes. So one of the limitations of, this is technical, but one of the limitations of Tor is that it only routes TCP traffic. It does not route UDP packets. So doing things like phone calls and video conferencing and what we're doing here is not as efficient.
It is slow as molasses in an igloo.
Yeah, you don't have the bandwidth and the low latency. But with LokiNet, you do have UDP routable traffic, which means you can do near real-time video conferencing over this onion routed network on their thing. So this network exists. You can launch a website on it without having to host it on the regular internet. You can use it to browse the regular internet without being tracked. More importantly, though, you can build apps that use it as its communication layer. One of those apps is called Session. So Session is very similar. Yeah, Session is like Signal, if you're familiar with the encrypted messenger Signal. It is similar conceptually to that, where it's end-to-end encrypted and nobody can snoop on your traffic and all that, except there is not phone numbers involved. You don't have to have a phone number and then register that with your account and stuff like that. So you have a better, you have a less identifiable. You can make as many usernames as you want. You can make as many effective phone numbers as you want. And so they have apps for your phone, but really the desktop is the most secure thing to use. So getsession.org, that's where you'll find that messenger. Lokinet.org is where you can learn about Lokinet. And then oxen.io is the name of the coin that powers the incentives, and the collateral requirements is called Oxen. And that is a proof of stake privacy coin that was originally a fork of Monero that uses ring signatures for anonymity. So all that is related. There's a bunch of other stuff too, though.
With Session as well, we can also say, like, without a shadow of a doubt, how good of a piece of software that one is, just because, like, we beta tested it for a while, and I mean, I know they're.
I still use it today. Yeah, I still use it today. There are
switch
public
phones so
chat
damn
rooms.
often that I don't have it now, but I need to reload it.
Well, I use it on my desktop. I use it on my
Right.
phone sometimes, but typically I just use it on my desktop.
You're a computer-bound man most days.
Yeah. I'm a Linux guy. They got a great, suite of Linux clients and stuff like that for Session, for Lokinet, and stuff like that. So, yeah, there's, just like any other network that has chat rooms and stuff like that, but they're more censorship resistant, they're more private, they're more encrypted. There's other stuff, though, that have nothing to do with blockchain that are really good privacy tools. There's one called Simplex that is interesting because what it does, Simplex stands apart from the others in that it does not, you don't have a username that's the same across all of your conversations. Instead, every conversation that you start with somebody creates basically a new identifier. So that, let's say, I don't know, let's say that you are just having a conversation with somebody and that person is a criminal. You don't know this. You just talk to them about Final Fantasy, right? Or whatever video games. Turns out they're an arms dealer or some stupid shit. And they get busted by the feds and their phone gets confiscated. And the authorities look at all of their contacts in their phone and they start correlating contacts. And so they assume, oh, anybody this person's talked to, we can't see the messages because they're encrypted. So we're going to assume that all these conversations are bad. And one of those conversations is your Final Fantasy fanboy conversation, right? You're in the dark. You don't know any of this is going on. But all of a sudden you're on a list and you get a knock on the door and maybe there's some sort of inappropriate planting of evidence that lands you in jail because of that whole thing. This shit happens. It's not fun to talk about. A lot of people don't want to admit that it happens, but it happens. So what they do is they make every conversation more secure by giving you a different handle or a different reference number or ID for every conversation that you have, even if it's the same person. So there is no correlation that can then happen where it's like, oh, this person was talking to this person and also that person because it's the same user ID. So that's simplex. They do that. There's one called Matrix. Very popular, very widely used. Matrix is open source. It is end-to-end encrypted. It is not like based on blockchain or any of that. It is simply created to be not only end-to-end encrypted to where you can talk to people without the conversations being snooped on by third parties, but also they have their name, the Matrix name comes from their ability to tie in different networks through these bridges that they have and to create sort of a matrix of different communication networks. So you could, for example, you could message someone on Twitter from your Matrix account, and there would just be a bridge that the communications go through. So you don't have to necessarily have an account on all the networks and then use them individually and log in here and log in there to talk to people. You can just talk to everybody everywhere from one account, and it's all to a degree end-to-end encrypted. They have chat rooms where everybody's all in the same room talking with different topics, that kind of thing. It's like it's a little bit like Session, except it is a whole different technology stack. So there's that, that can go on and on, I guess. But the point is there's a bunch of free, very good tools out there. That's 3 of them that you can use just to chat with people, just to have conversations. Some of them you can make phone calls over. Some of them you can make video calls over. I talked about LokiNet. We talked about VPNs. VPNs not strictly it's not decentralized necessarily, but it is a privacy tool that people can use. And then, of course, there is email. So email is probably a topic for a different day because that one is a little bit more complex to describe. Basically, the same technology that's used to make Bitcoin work, which is a public-private key pair, was originally, or it is most widely used in email, where you can create a public-private key pair. This has happened long before Bitcoin. And what you would do is you would publish your public key, just like sending someone your Bitcoin address. And anybody can use that public key to encrypt a message that you can then send over regular email. And only you can decrypt it. In other words, only you have your private keys, just like you have private keys in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and that's your spend key. That's the only thing that can spend your money, your balance. The first time I ever used it was called PGP or GPG, depending on what version you're using. But PGP stands for pretty good protection or something like that. And then GPG is the open source GNU version of it with the GNU pretty good encryption or something. But basically, yeah, you can give somebody your public key. They can use that public key. Anybody can use that public key to encrypt a message to you, and only you can decrypt it. At the same time, you can protect yourself against fake emails, where you can encrypt something with your private key and send it out, or you can sign something with your private key, and you can verify against your public key that the person holding the private keys did actually send that or did actually sign that. So unless somebody has your private keys, they can't fake it. So PGP is used very widely. There's a piece of open source software that is a key manager, drifting from PGP into key management. How do you keep all these keys safe and private? I use one called KeePass. You might have seen, like, there's plugins like LastPass and things like that. These are, relying on some third-party server that you have to trust that gets hacked, apparently. There are open source solutions to that. I use one called KeePass. KeePass XC, I think, is the more user-friendly, more common one. It has browser plugins. You can keep all your passwords in it for your different websites that you log into. You can auto-generate private or secure passwords that are just random gibberish that aren't words that can be dictionary attacked. And I use it. I like it. There's things that you can use to create secure passwords that, if you look at the Free Software Foundation or the is it FSF? Either Free Software Foundation or I think it might be the Electronic Freedom Foundation, the EFF. One of those, or maybe both of those, has information on what's called diceware, where you can actually, if you don't want to, let's say you want to remember a password, but you don't want it, you want it to be strong password that can't easily be cracked, even by an automated brute force like system. You can use something called diceware to generate a password that you can remember, but is also very secure. And the reason that's important is, I just talked about KeePass. It's a password manager that you can keep, and you keep all of your passwords for all of your accounts in this database. And that database itself is secured by one single password. So that makes that one single password very important, and you have to come up with a way to keep it safe so nobody gets it. So what I would recommend is using this concept called diceware to come up with a password that you can memorize, that you can then use to secure your database of other passwords in KeePass. So that's a really effective tool. Diceware is literally where you have so EFF or FSF or both, they have these diceware dictionaries. And all it is you have literal tabletop actual dice that you roll, right? You get 5 or 6 of them and you roll them, and you take the number that you get and you match it up to this dictionary of different words, and those words become your passphrase.
That's awesome.
And so you randomly generate a passphrase that you can then memorize and use to unlock your password manager that can hold things like private keys that you don't want ever to get out in the wild.
Based on not even the joke of a dice roll, but a legitimate dice roll. A
legitimate, actual, physical, analog space dice roll.
A meat space dice roll.
Yep. There's no chance of keyloggers. There's no chance of snoops. There's no chance of any of that.
But what if the government's put spy cameras in your attic and they're looking at your dice?
This is where you gotta. Yeah, I've also seen. What was that movie? I forget. Antitrust. That's what happens in Antitrust. Yeah. Yeah, in Antitrust, they have cameras looking down at developers' keyboards and screen to steal information from them.
That's crazy. Well, yeah. Actually, no, that's not crazy. That sounds like a thing that would happen.
Yeah. It was basically, the whole thing was basically a, here's what Microsoft did movie.
They stab at them.
So yeah, those are some tools. I just wanted to at least name some of them that I've used and that I would. Some of them I haven't used. I haven't used Matrix. I just know how it works. But yeah, that's a bunch of them.
So before we go, we have to briefly touch on the fact that Reddit exploded.
Yeah, dude. So we've been talking about that. We'll talk about it too tomorrow on our Den.Social call, because what they're doing is basically charging for API access, so that anybody who creates a third-party app that uses anything on Reddit. So if you have like an app that's not the official Reddit
Apollo
app,
being the biggest one on iOS, would have to pay $20 million a year annually.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, and those are all gone at the end of this month. No more no more third-party apps. Unless Reddit keeps doing its boycott that is working, because the site is damn near non-functional most of the time at this point.
Yeah, good.
Which is great. I'm on board for it.
Yeah,
we're here for all them Reddit people.
Yeah, something that we're talking about internally is releasing and opening our. So our API on Den is already open. It's just not documented publicly. So documenting that to where anybody could create a third-party app that uses Den's layers. You could have, for example, you could have an app that only used a single layer. It could be the Aliens app. And it only communicated with the Aliens layer. It wasn't even aware that any other layer. It wasn't even aware that, like, new users wouldn't even be aware that Den exists, for example.
They're just looking at the aliens.
Yeah. So you can make a whole app that integrates the Aliens layer for the UFO community with our Den API. The only thing that we have to figure out is a way for people to sign up for access to our authentication system, so that their app can allow people not only to sign in, but also to create new accounts.
Can we do it without charging $20 million a year?
Well, because of the way that Den is designed, we can do it without charging anything.
That's what they used to do, and then they just said, go fuck yourself to us.
Well, because they never had any way of monetizing outside of advertisements. And that's what this is about. It's that these third-party apps don't show all the advertisements that Reddit's advertisers want to run. So with Den, we don't rely, like, this is also why Den will work better at scale. Like, it only works really at scale because of this. But with the whole lot matter lore system, it creates revenue just by using it. And the more people that use it, the more naturally that these assets will be worth. And so you can actually pay the bills with the native infrastructure that's used as it's used. And it doesn't matter at all if somebody builds their own app that uses it, because just using it in itself makes the tokens and the assets involved more valuable, right? And that's what you need. And if somebody builds an app that integrates with just one layer, because that's what they care about, they want to make a Final Fantasy app, and maybe the app brings a lot more functionality than just the layer provides, but it uses the layer infrastructure for communications and for DMs and stuff. Fantastic. Guess what?
Yeah,
if you go on Den.Social, you'll see that Final Fantasy layer, and you can interact with those people on that app, even if they can't come over to your Aliens layer and stuff like that. So that's going to be, the timing of that is really interesting. I think it's really important that we get that done and pushed out and available, because unless we do that, we won't be able to take advantage of Reddit's implosion. So that's what I want to do. All right, so that's, I think, going to be it for right now. There's some reminders that I've posted in the, not the Aliens layer. Where was I? The Coffee with Den layer. Not that the Aliens layer isn't also cool. Let's see, where is it? Coffee with the Den.
It's under
episode 77. So there's some links I've posted in here. The LCP for this month is open. Go vote in that. Also, I posted something in the Australia layer. So if you know any Australians, see if they want to own part of the Australia layer. That way we don't just get a bunch of Americans talking about Fosters and Big Knives and the Crocodile Hunter and stuff like that.
God.
You don't want that. Maybe you do. I don't know. So check out the links to these that is in the links and reminders section. And tomorrow, I believe we're talking about healthcare for World Blockchain Roundtable. There's also an open theme suggestion post for July. What should we talk about in July? And then updates from Super Happy Dragon Lucky and some info on the SEC case with Binance, which is interesting. Binance is basically saying, fuck you, this is bullshit, but in legalese. So that's
fuck
cool.
you, this is bullshit in legalese.
Yeah.
Also, this is a good time to, I know usually we don't say do this at all, but, I'm going to say do this. Seeing as Reddit is a shit show right now and everybody's mad at it, go to your communities that are still active over there and chill for Den. Fuck it. This is the time to start scalping people. I mean,
seriously, the only way to like, it's this sort of network effect that you have to have where you need something like this that gets people like, oh, we can't use our communities anyway, they're blacked out, so let's just go over here. Even if most of them go back to Reddit after they've come over to Den to chat for a while, they'll know about Den, and some of them will stick around, so there'll be some capture on that. So definitely, I would say do that. Yeah, go say, hey, even just while it's blacked out, there's a similar forum over on Den. Let's go talk on there. Boom.
Oh, I'm gonna go do that and some alien stuff. That'll be fun. Seeing as aliens are hot right now.
Aliens are hot. Those sexy, sexy aliens.
I was about to say, I wonder if that's gonna. I mean, hey, look, we've all seen Star Trek. Early aliens were just green women, so sexy, sexy green ladies.
All right, y'all. Well, I'll see you next week. Reminder: we are going to the evenings, starting probably in September, and after a break in August. But we're still going to be in the mornings until at least August. So
end
during
of July,
all
August
that stuff. Yeah. And more on that later. Yeah, morons. I don't know why. I just wanted to say
more on us being morons later. This time we'll just have, alcohol and have worked a full day, so we'll be even more rude.
It'll be Wednesday, so it'll be like, man, this week so far it'll be like a hump day show,
It's the middle of the day and everything was awful.
All right, let's get out of here. Thanks. Let me know what I need to make a more concise video about that I can do some edits on and churn out. I don't know when I'll have time to do them, but I will try really hard to make time for it. If you have a particular thing you want me to cover that is not 2 hours long of just rambling. All right, here's a song called Into the Dragon from Y'all Weird. And see you next Wednesday.
Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best. Adaptable, all capital, label radical yet rational. A doctrinal approach is palpable if this animal is fallible. But that conclusion is laughable, so with for all detachable from the mandible, you see it now?